Welcome to Clout 941, the only live television show on Sarasota politics and issues. Tonight we are going to tackle the race for the Venice City Commission, which the election is actually in November. It is the next election coming up in Sarasota County, and so we're starting to focus a little bit on what's going on down in Venice. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding the Venice City Commission with a bunch of lawsuits and things like that. And we have one of the candidates for the Venice City Commission here on the show tonight. But first, a little bit of news. And by the way, you're definitely not going to miss our Weasel of the Week tonight. It's going to be should be pretty funny. But first, a little bit on the news. Last week, our Weasel of the Week was we made State Senator Mike Bennett our Weasel of the Week because we didn't really have enough time to flesh it out. But Mike Bennett at the Lincoln Day dinner, the dinners that the parties do, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they're sort of unity dinners where everybody comes together and they're fundraisers. And in the 2008 election, Mike Bennett had given several speeches, basically not on behalf of Keith Fitzgerald, who's a Democrat, but mentioning, tacitly endorsing him over the Republican candidate Laura Benson, which is fine. But he came to the Lincoln Day dinner and he actually went up there and praised Keith Fitzgerald right in front of Republican candidate Ray Pilon and his supporters. And once again, it just wasn't the setting for it because it was a Republican Party unity dinner and you have a Republican elected official praising a Republican opponent. But one thing I mentioned is that the two past chairmen of the Republican Party walked out of the dinner because their seats were taken by the state committee woman who had apparently refused to move. We were told that by 4 or 5 different sources, including multiple people who were sitting at that table. However, I did get a call this week from the wife of the chairman who adamantly denied that that was the case and denied that that was the reason why he left the dinner. In fact, what she stated was it was their daughter's birthday, who was 1 year old, and that's why he left the dinner, so that he could get home and spend some time with his daughter. So we wanted to, of course, get both sides of the story out to our listeners, and so everybody knows where we're coming from. Now, our guest tonight, candidate for and longtime active political person in Sarasota County, my friend Harry Walia. Harry, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, sir.
Now, I will say Harry's feeling a little bit under the weather, but we told him it's a live show, and we drug him in here and made him show up. But thanks for coming.
You're very welcome.
Harry, tell us about your background. First, I want to talk about you're not a native of the United States. Tell us where you're from and a little bit about your background and how you came here.
Well, I was born in India, 1954, and I left India at a very young age. I traveled the world, all over Europe, South America, good portion of North America, and in 1981 I ended up in America. And it didn't take much for me to decide why I want to live here and why I want to be an American. I saw from New York to Hawaii one language, one federal law, and one system, and how it operated compared to Europe, where every 200 miles there is a new language, new currency, and new law. So I found myself that if I lived in Europe, which I initially wanted to go and live in Europe, I found I would be suffocated. And looking at American landscape, 3,000 miles to the west and 1,600 miles from north to south, I found freedom. I felt freedom. That's why I choose America.
You know, I know you're a real patriotic guy, and I have heard a saying over the years that immigrants are oftentimes the most patriotic Americans because they're here by choice, not by birth. Is that sort of how you feel?
Absolutely. I think in life we start taking things for granted. So if we go back 3 generations ago, the Americans were the most patriotic. And then as it trickles down, the excitement fades. So the American spirit is actually the immigrant soul, which keeps American spirit alive. So for us, having the right way of immigration and making new Americans is what America is. That's why America was founded.
I think that's really well said. Tell us about your background in business and sort of...
Well, when I came to America, I started working for a fashion designing company. And there were distributors and manufacturers in 3 different countries. And I became a marketing man for them. The purpose was, once again, I was thinking, you know, if I'm in sales and in marketing, I can see America. So I won't be confined to one office. And with that, my first year, I saw 28 cities.
Wow.
It was from Seattle to Miami, and Miami to New York, and New York to LA, and making stops in between in Dallas and Atlanta. So after I saw this whole thing, I saw the first-hand experience, I felt how America works. And then I started my own, a small business. I went into my own manufacturing unit. In Miami, we started a very small factory.
Why is it that you came to Venice? How did you end up in Venice?
Well, from Miami, I went back to California. I had lived in California about 2 years before when I was working for the other company. And I had started doing some business in the Far East. So from Miami to going to Hong Kong and China was a very long trip. And at that time also I was involved with a person who became my wife that time. So I had to, it was an additional 5 hours to my travels, to my journeys. And I used to go to China, Hong Kong once a month. So I decided to move to LA. And then I discovered within 2 years' time that no, this is not for me. I have to go back to Florida. So I came to Florida. I landed in Jacksonville. I traveled the whole East Coast, came back through Alligator Alley, came up on the West Coast, and ended up in Sarasota. It was a weekend of 4th of July, beautiful day, just like the weather we have these days. Ringling Bridge and the water under the bridge looked beautiful. There were boats, sailboats, and it was just such a pristine and nice city, great feeling. And I felt at home. I said, I want to live here.
Okay.
I ended up in Venice because Sarasota, I couldn't find what I was looking for at the house. So I came to Venice for a minute. And I saw this house, and in 15 minutes' time, I bought that house. So
and
gave
you
them
still
a
live
contract.
there now?
I'm still in the same house.
Okay. We have to take our first break, Harry. When we come back, we'll have more with Harry Walia, candidate for Venice City Commission.